Another day and another big name off the free agency whiteboard. You can draw a line through Bul Kuol. Hello and welcome to Marketplace as we take you through the NBL free agency period. Jack Heverin joined, as always, by the number one newsbreaker in Australian basketball, Olgun Uluc from ESPN. Olgun, let's start right there with Bul Kuol. You mentioned how big of a signing he was and how popular he's been with teams. The Taipans have managed to keep their man.
That's right, Jack. I'm told Bul Kuol has agreed to a one-year deal to return to the Cairns Taipans. A huge retention for the Taipans who, there was a sense that they might get priced out of Bul Kuol because the interest in him from around the league was so significant that the number kept going up and up and up. But the Taipans managed to come to the table, pay him what he felt he deserved, and he'll go back there for one more year. And from what I'm told, speaking to people around the situation, there's a sense that Kuol wants to, grow his game, expand more, continue growing under Adam Forde and in a system that has demonstrated to allow him to, play his game with a level of freedom. He wanted to go back to that, and this gives him an opportunity to basically be a contract player going straight into next season. All eyes will be on him because he'll be in this exact same position next off season as well.
Is the 1 year aspect a little interesting when we've spoken about other deals that have been done already that are 2 or 3 years in length?
For me, it's interesting because I know that there were multi-year deals on the table from around the league, effectively matching the same amount of money too. So there were guarantees for multiple years around the league. But the way I see it is, look what Keanu Pinder did last off season, where he had similar sorts of offers from around the league, but returned to Cairns under a coach who he knows he excels under, a coach who knows how to maximize his game. And Keanu Pinder effectively doubled his money and became, one of the premier players in the NBL. And, we saw he went to the Perth Wildcats on a significant sum of money. And so, there's a sense that Kuol may be able to do something similar. Whether he can reach the same heights that Pinder did, an MVP level player, is yet to be seen. But that's sort of the thinking here, that he can go back, continue to excel and grow, and then hopefully reach that next level. And going to next off season, he'll be an even bigger target.
We'll talk about something else involving the Taipans in a moment. But just on this one, given that it's a pretty significant one, Olgun, and from what you're saying, the deal is a big one, what does this look like for Cairns moving forward as they build the rest of their roster?
Well, the question now becomes, how much capacity do the Taipans have to bring in more elite players? The sense I got from speaking to people around the league once this deal got done was that, basically Bul Kuol got, an import package as far as, the contract that he got. And so this may limit the Taipans when it comes, to filling out the rest of their roster. It may limit the potential of, a high level import as far as, the third import they may get. And so, it's a sum of money that the Taipans will probably have to marquee, and they're not known as huge spenders. And so that's something that will be a consideration for them as they try to fill out the remainder of their roster.
You've been right across the Australian kids and New Zealand kids returning to the NBL to play with us next season. Tell us about another one, Sam Menenga. He's a big boy.
He is. He has a giant frame. It's the sort of thing that makes me think that he'll be able to make a contribution in the NBL from day one. He was a priority signing for Adam Forde. As soon as Forde saw him, he knew that that's someone he wanted on his roster. You can see him playing alongside someone like Sam Wardenberg, the two Kiwis, a potential New Zealand Tall Blacks front court of the future. He's a skilled big, 6'9", 240, so, getting around 120 kilos. He's just really skilled. Him and Wardenberg could be a really intriguing front court pairing. He can shoot the ball, and so the style of play that we saw the Taipans play, as far as, stretching the floor, widening that floor, and, Tajiri McCall going to work and having shooters all around him, they can play that style of play with Sam Menenga in the lineup. And there's a sense that they're so high on him that it wouldn't surprise me if those minutes are really significant early on. That's the extent to which Forde really wanted Menenga's signature.
You're talking to agents all the time and you're talking to other teams, both here and around the world. Adam Forde's now starting to build a reputation like a Sam Wardenberg of grabbing kids from college and building them pretty quickly. Is this going to be an ongoing attraction point for the Taipans, do you think?
Well, it has to be. It's not just Wardenberg. Think back to, let's even talk about Bul Kuol, who came in as, a relative unknown, but, he was Rookie of the Year under Adam Forde and developed into, one of the most sought after 3-and-D guys in the NBL. Keanu Pinder is a perfect example of Adam Ford's ability to develop players, and player development is something that Adam Ford holds his hat on, and he did it with Sam Wardenberg, not just how good Wardenberg was able to be throughout the season, but just the difference between the first half of last season and the second half. His growth was pretty immense, and so if you're a Sam Menenga and you see what Adam Ford did with Sam Wardenberg and Keanu Pinder, that's obviously a system that you want to jump right into and be a part of.
Okay, so the three big names that we started off free agency period with are now off the board, as we mentioned. Bul Kuol, Keanu Pinder, and Will McDowell-White. Go back to one of our very first episodes, Olgun. You said that once Bul Kuol signed, it would start to unlock a lot of other moves. So what can we start to expect in the next 7 days?
Well, so the reason why I thought Bul Kuol was perhaps the most significant free agent was because of that. The amount of money that teams are willing to spend on him, it dictated the rest of the market, because now if you look at the Sydney Kings or a Southeast Melbourne Phoenix or the Illawarra Hawks who couldn't land Bul Kuol, they all of a sudden have this chunk of money that they were preparing to spend on Kuol that they can now spend elsewhere. And so it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of the other local wings get off the table. And so I'm talking about your Anthony Drimmick, your Tanner Krebs, your Todd Blanchfield. Those names are probably going to get off the table now that these other teams know where Bul Kuol is headed. And then when you look at these teams, you wonder, do they maybe not focus as much on the local talent and spend a little bit more on imports? It wouldn't surprise me if some teams did that as well, because if you're spending a giant chunk of money, you all of a sudden have that back from that Bul Kuol contract that you were going to spend. You can all of a sudden split that up and get a higher level import at all three positions if you like.
Well, just finally on the imports, and this question's been coming through a bit on social media, in terms of when teams will start to announce their imports. Now, whether that's returning imports, dragging an import out of another team from the NBL, or of course signing from anywhere around the world, when do you think we'll start to see some of these names land on the board?
So when it comes to re-signings of imports, so let's talk some timelines. They sometimes happen relatively quickly. You might see it with a Milton Doyle who remains in talks with the Tasmania Jack Jumpers, and they're fairly positive. Generally, when it comes to new imports that might return, you're generally looking down at the Summer League. So you're looking around July. And that's because imports want to have an opportunity to play Summer League and potentially get on an NBA roster. And teams want to have an opportunity to go to the NBA Summer League in Vegas and Utah and be able to see all of these guys in the gym and perhaps, find that, golden recruit that they can maybe get. Another date that I do want to mention is April 14. Now, that is the date in which there's a deadline in which teams can buy out a contract for 50% of its value. Once that date passes, then a team, if it has a desire to buy out a contract, they would have to pay the entirety of its value. And so I'm looking at the Perth Wildcats and the situation regarding Todd Blanchfield and Mitch Norton. If you have a desire to buy out Todd Blanchfield's contract, for example, you can save 50% of your money by buying it out before that April 14th date. And so it would make sense for the Wildcats and teams around the league to push to try and find guys like Blanchfield and Norton and Kyle Zunick new homes ahead of that date. At the very least, it would make sense for the Wildcats to try and push it before that date.
It's a date to keep in mind as things continue to roll over. We'll have you covered here on Marketplace. Olgun, as always, great to chat, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks for being with us on the Marketplace. Of course, don't forget, you can stay up to date with everything happening across the period. Go to nbl.com.au. You can follow Olgun on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, leave us a like or a comment as well.